Everybody, thanks for watching. And just a quick reminder that Crystals is now available on DVD and digital download. And Merkaba Academy has launched. There are also many different type of membership options starting from $35.99 and up. Definitely take a look at it. Also, there's a new video on Merkaba Academy website. Just go to Conscious Courses into your videos, and there's a new video that has been put there with a new intro. So definitely check that out if you are a member. But I want to get into this video and address just a forum that we've been talking about over the last few days, and that has to do with the cult of Serapis. If any of you guys was in that conversation or heard about this whole argument and discussion about Google and the cult of Serapis, then you understand what I'm talking about. But, Google, when you Google stuff a lot of times, you'll get different Wikipedia, options, you might as well say. Typically giving you the same type of information. And you have this entry here for Serapis. When you Google it, pops up and it says that the image of Serapis was used for the image of Jesus Christ. And this is something that people have been talking about for a long time. So you have a lot of Christians who've seen it. And there's been a lot of, whole entire websites that went up to basically detract it and try to defend, Jesus against these allegations and this information. And again, it goes into that whole point that, one, we can prove the cult of Serapis. We can prove that this image that resembles Jesus, no matter how you want to slice it, existed before Jesus did. We're talking about BCE times. And the resemblance is clear. So it is said that this is where they got the image of Jesus Christ. It's a lot of different places where people say the image of Jesus Christ came from. But when you look at the Roman dress and how they dressed back then, you look at Jesus and how he's always dressed. I mean, you can always make that comparison. And people want to say, this is where they got the image, but it doesn't take away from the fact that the man exists. They just didn't know how he looked, and this is what they took. Now, that's all well and good until you put all the pieces together, as I talked about with the Greek connection to, the Bible and everything. So I've been talking about for a while now about how they created it and how all this information comes from them. And when you take a look at it, it's clear as day. But, supposedly, as I talked about, you have Ptolemy II Philadelphus, who really wanted to get the Egyptian and Greek people to worship, the same God. And you had the Greek people who wanted to worship a God that didn't have an animal head. They wanted to worship a God that was normal, that looked like them. So this is where you get, the combination of Apis and Osiris to give you Serapis. And a lot of you guys understand that story. But this is what, they came up with. Now, I talked about this before when Frank Gaudio pulled up the images of Serapis from the second city of Tanis Heraklion, which was basically a trade port that was, right off the coast of Alexandria, Egypt, where you had a lot of trade going on with the Greeks and the ancient Egyptians and everybody who could come into that territory. And they found the statues of Serapis. I showed you guys when I was in a museum in Cairo where they had the statue as well. So we know this existed. We know it's been talked about. It's documented. We know that worship was there. And you had the cult of Serapis later on where this deity was worshipped. And as I said, through generational indoctrination, basically meaning when you start teaching something to kids, the adults will pass away and the kids will grow up with those teachings, and that will be just a normal culture of how things are. And it's basically, if you want to give it a comparison, you had a generation that grew up basically, not really liking black people and understanding that black people wasn't allowed to do this, Jim Crow and everything like that. And that generation died off, and their children grew up understanding that, it's, desegregation and everybody goes to the same school when it's not the same stuff. Back then, those kids would not have accepted that. It would have been something that they just wouldn't tolerate it. It wouldn't have been normal, to whereas the later generations grew up with it and it just became normal. So, when you change something, they always say that the children are the future. And when you teach the kids something, they follow it, it sticks, they take it to the future, they take it to the next level. And this is basically what you can do with generational indoctrination. You teach something to the kids grow up, they talk about it, they share it, and it becomes a normal. And basically this is what happened. So you had the old generation of people who knew the old ways pass on, and people growing up with the teachings of the new ways, and this was normal to them. And then as time passes, everything just becomes normal. A lot of people have no clue about ancient history and what actually happened. So you have a lot of people in those lands who believe that they are the indigenous people and that they have always been there, when that's basically not the case. So what's happening in a lot of these discussions is a lot of people, simply can't accept, as I said, the Greeks' role in the creation of the Bible, when everywhere you look, there's no other people we can look to as to the creation of the Bible. It's the same thing with Rome and the New Testament. We can't find it from anywhere else. Everything that has to do with the New Testament, we are getting from Rome. We know about Vetus Latina, we know about the Latin Vulgate, we know about the unsealed codices and all of the manuscripts that was written in Latin that was, forbidden to be translated into any other language. So Rome had a firm control over the Bible for a long time. Everything dealing with the creation of biblical religion has to do with the Greeks and the Romans. And it's not a coincidence that you have for hundreds of years Hellenization, which Hellenization, when you Google it and read it, is talking about the spreading of Greek beliefs and ideas and cultures and what have you. But here you go with the Greeks pushing Serapis. So again, it calls into question the letters of Orestes, which gives validity to the existence of the Pentateuch or the Old Testament. It's the only thing that, makes it as if it actually existed when you read the LXX, the letters of Orestes. Without the letters of Orestes, there's absolutely no proof that this stuff happened, and you can look at it and say, well, the Greeks just came up out of thin air with this doctrine, which is, what happened. So you have this Greek history, and you have them pushing Hellenization and the spreading of this culture. And we look at real history, we can see this. And then you look at the fact that Rome came and conquered the Greeks over time. And then next thing you know, you see the spreading of Greek culture and Greek mythology transformed into Roman mythology, but it's talking about the same gods, basically going back to ancient Kemet. And then they also just so happen to have this doctrine, this religion that piggybacks off the religion that the Jews or the Greeks was pushing first. So you have the Old Testament written in Greek. As I said before, we never had a Hebrew translation of the Torah or the Pentateuch in Hebrew that predates the Septuagint Greek. We don't have it. It don't exist. It's only been spoken about. It has been said. We never actually had it. We only still have a fragment of the translation, supposedly the translation that took place with the creation of the Septuagint. So we don't really have all of that as well. As I said, poof, all of a sudden we get the Old Testament given to us from the Greeks. So you have that. And then you also have later with Rome taking over and then bringing forth this whole doctrine, piggybacking off, what the Greeks put out. And it just so happened that they conquered the Greek territory. This whole doctrine is being, pushed over with Rome. And then you just look at the belief in the religion itself and everything the Bible speaks to. And you have these two civilizations doing everything against the Bible itself. So for them to be holy and religious and whatnot, put this doctrine out for, I guess people could say, spiritual beliefs or what have you, they went against the Bible in every single way, raping and pillaging and killing and murdering and everything you can imagine that's a sin they were doing. Remember, prostitution was legal in Rome. I mean, it was so many things that goes against the Bible that was legal in Rome. And here you have the Romans with the creation of the New Testament and all these biblical doctrines pushing this religion, yet going against the religion at the same time. So you have people who look at this whole thing and say, well, this is some kind of hoax, and, the image of Serapis has nothing to do with Jesus Christ and everything like that. And it's funny how, as I said, the image comes from the Greeks themselves, the same people who gave us the Old Testament in their language, gave us the New Testament in their language. Again, the translation into Latin was the translation from a Greek manuscript to Latin, and it all comes, full circle. Started with them, it ends with them, and you have when Rome takes over, they basically pick up and create their doctrine and put out, the New Testament and put out, the whole Bible and so on and so forth. But you got to look at that. There's a lot of people who don't understand the history of the Bible, who bring to the table a lot of, spiritual beliefs and what have you, and emotions, and they don't look at the history. A lot of people absolutely have no clue about the Ptolemies, the dynasty of the Ptolemies, and how it was so many of them, and how when you look at stuff like this, you have Ptolemy here dressed like an Egyptian. You cannot find any depiction or any proof that the Greeks dressed like this before the conquest of ancient Egypt, meaning they conquered Egypt and then start copying off of Egypt shit. And that's exactly what happened. When I went to the Cairo Museum, I showed you guys the stelas and everything they was doing to basically piggyback and copy off of what the ancient Egyptians was doing. They stole the gods, they stole their culture, they stole the information and knowledge, and basically tried to transform themselves into gods to be like the Egyptians was. And it's just something that they couldn't do. And when they couldn't get the people to actually worship them, they created this doctrine. They created all of this to basically hide Greek mythology within it and indoctrinate the children with it. And the children grew up. So again, as I said before, you have the people, the Hebrew Israelites, who say, well, the Hebrews was black. And yeah, for sure, the first Hebrews who was being taught and indoctrinated with this information, this knowledge by the Greeks, were basically the people that was living in Egypt and living in that territory at that time, who was black people. We're talking about people from the Egyptian Empire, which, as I said before, and you can look up yourself, the Egyptians ruled the land we know today as Israel. It was part of the ancient Egyptian Empire. So it was black people there. So these were the people who they was trying to get to basically spread this information. And it spread to Rome. When Rome took over, you had black people pushing this religion, and it was pushing it, backed by Rome and backed by, their sources. So it spread, and that was the idea, and that was the goal for them, to spread this religion and to indoctrinate the people with it. And it was used to basically take over, and it did. So, when you have people under this religion and supposedly following this religion, you can set rules and you can basically govern them based off the religion itself. And this is what the Pope did, and this is why everybody came up against the popes back then. And it took a while for them to basically get back in control. So, the fact that this, article pops up, and the fact that people's talking about Serapis and looking at the actual history of it is important. It's big, because it's going to get people who's beginning this research to, once you come across their name, because you will, to see that. And it connects the dots with the Greek connection when you pay attention. So, what we got to understand is, we didn't control the printing press. We didn't create the printing press. We didn't control the publishing houses back then. We was going through slavery back then. So we wasn't the ones to create or control the image of Jesus Christ. The image was given to us by the same people who gave us the book. Plain and simple. And you got to ask yourself, why would your God allow this to happen, to allow a false image of him to be basically accepted into the hearts and minds of people, for hundreds of years? So you got to look at that. Same people gave you the book. So if it's an image of deception, why wouldn't you look at the book as a book of deception as well? Plain and simple. If they would give you an image to deceive you, why would you believe they gave you a book in truth? If they're going to basically give you a lie of his image, what makes you think they're going to give you a truth in the books, in the words? So it's just stuff that people don't understand. And again, when you couple all that, because, when I'm speaking to black folks, I always take it back to slavery, and I always ask black folks that's Christians to really think about the fact that, we went through slavery, and we went through all of this stuff by, while being taught about a God that's supposed to be loving and peaceful and merciful, what have you. And, how is that possible? This is why, again, as I said, so many people jump on the Hebrew Israelite doctrine, because it's the only way to make that make sense. When you think about the fact that, why would God, who's supposed to be so loving and caring, allow us to be in bondage for so long and go through so much stuff at the hands of seemingly the worst people on the planet? When you think about it, the wars have been caused by them. Africa has never attacked any country. We've never committed any wars. You can't go back during, the rulership of the ancient Egyptians, any time to see Africans attacking anybody or trying to conquer anything, for that matter, and committing genocide. It just didn't happen. But you got to think about, why would they be put in charge instead of people that's been peaceful? And your Bible's telling you the same thing. You had people that wasn't doing anything that was conquered and killed. So much crazy stuff happened in the Bible, and we just supposed to accept it. So, I mean, you can look at it from the logical standpoint, of course, and you can just read the book. And like I said, you can read the book and you accept that as being fair and something that you want to follow, and that's up to you. But it doesn't make sense. Even with the Hebrew Israelite doctrine, it doesn't make sense. As I went through, none of it fits. None of it works. None of it makes sense. Especially when you add in the fact, again, as I said, you have the King James Version written during the time of slavery. So Deuteronomy 28 is something they already knew what was going on, because the book was written during the time of slavery. So everything goes back to that image, and everything goes back to the fact that one, you have the image that's in the museum in Britain, that they tell you in the museum that this was the image, and that's big to me. That's something I think should be on TV, but it's not. So if you have them saying the image of Serapis that's in the museum in England was the image used for the creation of Jesus Christ, then that just should have people scratching their head. Do they know what this dude looked like? Of course not. He didn't exist. So we need to find an image, and this is the image we're going to use, the image that started it all, the image that will be looked at as the first image as them in God form, to be worshipped by us. So when you take it back to Hellenization, when they began their conquest, this is what they was doing. They was using that image and getting people to worship that image, and it's the same thing that's happening today. So when you really go back and look at Greek mythology, as I said, Pandora's box, Eve and the apple, same type of stuff. Caelian and Pharaoh, Noah's Ark, same type of stuff. The same stories parallel Greek mythology. Then you have the image of, Zeus Ammon with the ram horns. Like, what is that? You have him looking like Jesus or looking like God, and Jesus associated with the ram or the lamb. And it's the same thing that we see back during those times. He's dressed like the Greeks. The depictions with the lamb and everything that's involved in lamb and everything, same thing with Judaism. You have the slaughtering of the lamb, everything, the sacrifice of the lamb. You find that back during Greek culture, Greek times. It's not hard to figure out. The oldest Jewish synagogue in the world is in Delos, Greece. Everything is right there in your face to see where this stuff began. And the simple fact that, as I said, you have nobody mentioning a Hebrew or a Jew during this time. It's just like common sense to me. It's like, people are in denial, and they are like throwing everything at you except facts, stuff that just make no sense, that has to be understood or believed in, via the Bible, which the Bible is not proven. You can't use the Bible as your proof for, the belief. It's not proven. It's not a proven book. Again, that's why it requires faith. You can't prove it. So this is what a lot of people was talking about in a lot of these forums. A lot of people was just going book, chapter, and verse, and quotes and everything. And you can't prove none of that stuff. It's not proven history. It's not real history that we can back up and prove and say that this stuff actually happened. So we can't really use that. And again, the book itself is in question. So you can't use the book to figure this whole thing out. We got to go look at actual proof and facts. And, when you're doing the real research, you use the book as the clues, to get the clues to figure a lot of this stuff out. But, the book saying that this is this and this is that and this is how this stuff began, we can't prove any of that. What we can prove is the real history that we see, that was written about, that was talked about by many different civilizations. And this is, everything dealing with the Ptolemies and their rule until they fell at the hands of Rome. And so much is wrapped up in their dynasty, and everything that's biblical that we see as far as the Pentateuch of the Old Testament is dealing with them. all the way up until Rome conquers, and then all of a sudden we get a New Testament, which Rome's saying basically, yeah, we like what you did and it's working, so we're going to take the same idea or use the same idea and keep it going, which is what they did, which is why Hellenization didn't end when Rome took over. It still continued on because it was working, and you had most of the people in that area anyway speaking Greek. Everybody was speaking Greek because, the wars of the Diadochi had the Greeks in basic control over, North Africa and, all these lands that was in Europe, these European lands. So Greek territories, people were speaking Greek. And by the time, the Old Testament rolled around, or when this religion started to spread, nobody was speaking Hebrew. So supposedly these Hebrew people, if you go by the Bible, supposedly, they came there, they conquered, they took over, they had the land of Israel, they were there for a long time. So how is it by the time the Greeks take over, nobody's speaking Hebrew? Nobody's speaking Hebrew. Everybody's speaking Greek. You can find no Hebrew speaking people, but supposedly the Greeks have the Hebrews captive or, under their control in Israel. And he has to send to get this translation done and give up all this stuff to get a translation done of the Hebrew law into Greek. And he should have been able to find somebody right near him that spoke Hebrew. And as many scholars are pointing out, there's no way that, any elders, could have been found, one, let alone what they do, that translation. They would have died before they did the translation, according to a lot of Hebrew scholars. So, suspect. Again, goes back to Serapis. That's where the prototype for the creation of Jesus Christ came from. The image came from that. And it's been put out there the same as God. When you look at, whenever they draw God, it's the same type thing. White man with a beard and hair. And this is where it came from. So it's a lot of people who have a lot of different depictions that they believe was used to create Jesus Christ. It don't matter. It's still the image of a white man as God. And it was taught to us. And this is what a lot of people are walking around wearing and having tattooed on them, and believing that this is how God looks, like that, like a white man. So, it's something to think about. It's something that you got to do your research in and really understand, real history and Greek history and what has been covered up for a long time. So when you start getting into it, a lot of that stuff unravels and you can see what's going on. But just because we was discussing this, I'm going to put this video up. A lot of people are members of Merkaba Academy, so I'll put this video up on there and get people to really think about it a little bit more and, and dig into it. So I have videos on all that, as you guys know, and we really get into it in these videos. But I think people should really pay attention to history. I have the Ancient History series that really goes through all of this. That's why I put the series out, because the Ancient History series is going through this time from the fall of Kemet to the rise of the European powers. Plain and simple. That series is important because it really gives you that layout of history that is not being taught and it's backed up. The proof is there. You can do your research yourself. But it's important. It's important for people to really go back and look at real, proven, actual history and what is proven versus the damn Bible that's just a book that's not proven. So it's a no-brainer as far as what you should be looking towards more, and that's actual history. So, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch. Definitely, as I said, it's different membership levels for Merkaba Academy. Definitely take advantage. They're going to be up there. It's a lot of stuff coming to the site. Definitely, you'll see new intro for my videos, new videos that's much better on Merkaba Academy because I can put more content up there. I can use more stuff to make my videos the way I want them to be, stuff I can't use on YouTube. So you'll see a lot of new videos coming in that's completely different, and just a lot more content coming. And anybody's waiting for DVDs, as I said, it's 2 new DVDs coming out. So we want to make sure you guys get those 2 new ones before we ship them all out for the people that bought all of them. So you got some, you'll get those new ones. I don't want to send them out to you, and then, you got 3 new ones that come out and you're like, damn, I should have waited. That way you'll get them as well. So I appreciate your patience and support. And yeah, see you guys next video.